Hey guys, let's try to explore the difference between language and literature and in what all ways language is compatible with literature and vice versa, and what are the ways in which language has some influence and its impact in literature. So basically, we need to understand what language is. Language, by all means, we know that it is the prime medium of communication. It can be considered as the ultimate medium of communication as well. So people use different, you know, different types of languages, different versions of languages, different entities of languages in order to effectively communicate to the other person. Be it visual media, be it direct audio, you know, be it through letters, be it in any type of communication. In any type of communication, we use language. So without language, it's not possible to communicate. You need to express out. Even gestures are also considered as part of language. It is the artistic form of language. So when it comes to expressing out your ideas, your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your ideologies, uh, you need to do it in papers. When you do it on papers, what will happen? It will become literature. That means your skills your ability of communication, your ability to express out using language will automatically transform to something called literature. And literature itself has different forms. Literature are of different genres. Different kinds of literature are there in this world. We've got understanding about literature from time immemorial. Since the ages of the great rishis of India, or the great philosophers of Greece, we have evidences of great literature. But when it comes to English literature, we've got evidences since the latter part of the 8th century. By the start of 9th century, I can say, we have evidences of English literature with the only written format or currently available evidence is the proof is a poem, a great epic during the Anglo-Saxon period. During the Anglo-Saxon period in England. The name of that great epic is Beowulf. 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 That is one among the currently available proof or evidence of English literature. The old, even before the Old English, during the Anglo-Saxon period. When it comes to the 11th century AD, with the start of Geoffrey Chaucer's the Canterbury Tales, we have almost continuous evidences of English literature till today. There we couldn't find any kind of gap in between since Chaucer or Geoffrey Chaucer, who is also considered as the father of English literature, wrote the Canterbury Tales. So basically, literature is divided into different genres. As you may know, that poetry, drama, novels, short stories, fiction, non-fiction, criticism is all part of literature. These are all different wings, different boxes of literature, in which these are all developed, these are all constituted or categorized within the boxes on the basis of the content and form of the literature in which we are talking about. A novel should be in that format according to the contemporary ages. It should be considered as a novel. A drama in whatever language should have a peculiar format. Short story too. And of course, as I mentioned, there is something called criticism as well. Now, criticism is a kind of appreciating the literature, appreciating the works of authors on the basis of the ideologies and the thoughts in which a critic believes in. There are different types of schools, critical thinking schools, which was evolved and transformed over the years, especially during the first part of 19th century, and till today we have different thoughts of critical analysis, critical discourse about literature. That is also part of literature. Critical appreciation is also part of literature. That's very important. And of course, the non-fiction part. When you deal with essays, when you deal with the pamphlets, or autobiography, a biography, a travelogue, all these comes under literature. They are different pieces of literature. They are different genres of literature. And when it comes to fiction, we have the romances, the novels, and short story. And among novels also we have different kinds of genres, which we'll deal with in the later chapters or later sessions. So there is another one, which is poetry, and this is the most important one in literature. In poetry also we have two types of poetry. One is objective poetry and the other one is subjective poetry. And in objective poetry you have a lot of narrative works, narrative as well as dramatic works, which includes ballads, epics, and the metrical romances. The ballads and epics. Epics, as you know, we have two greatest of epics in India, the Mahabharata and Ramayana, as well as in Greece we have the two greatest epics by Homer, the Iliad and Odyssey. So when it comes to English literature, you have the Paradise Lost by John Milton, which is considered as one of the greatest English epics in the history of English literature. And when you talk about the subjective kind of poetry, you have the lyric. In lyric itself, you have something called elegy, which is normally written mourning the death of someone. That is elegy. Or you have the sonnet. Sonnet is a 14-lined poem, and an ode, then dramatic monologues, then hymns. These are all part of the subjective kind of poetry, poems, which comes under subjective lyric. So now, how will you appreciate literature? How do you appreciate literature? What are the different methodologies and approaches that we have, or what are the different aspects in which we need to understand and appreciate or criticize literature? So, in order to understand that, in order to go through the different approaches of criticizing or understanding or studying literature, we need to first focus on literature as a whole, along with language as compatible to literature. Literature is by far concerned with the content and form. In other words, we should say that it's not just the story of a work, but the way in which it is written should also be taken into consideration when you appreciate and when you criticize a work of an author. Literature is, of course, a body of written works. You know, the name is often applied to those imaginative works of poetry and prose. It can be considered as imaginative as well. Sometimes, sometimes we've got a lot of examples from the greatest of all time writers uh, who have completed works on the basis of real life stories, real life examples. So literature is a mixture of not just, and it's a mixture of imagination as well as real life. It's how it's being executed. That's our question. That is the way in which we manage the appreciation or the criticizing of work. There is a greatest of saying in literary criticism by the famous French critic whose name is Roland Barthes. He is a literary critic who always stick to the point that when an author completes his work and when he publishes it and when that work goes to the public, to the reader, the author will become a dead person. Means the death of an author when you complete that work, when you publish that work, the death of an author, and it is in front of the reader, or it is the authority of the reader to interpret the work in whatever ways or whatever manner they want it to do. So we can't consider the thoughts and ideologies or the thinkings of the author who has written it. So the reader came into existence. That is the response of the reader. So, how it works, response of the reader, how it works. These are all part of criticism. These are all parts of understanding literature. As literature is considered as work of imagination and it's a constituent of real life experiences, real life stories. It can also be considered as a reflection of the changing lifestyles, the changing material, economic, and the social conditions in our society. That is, I should say that there is also part of a different ideology which has been formulated by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. When they came out, they propounded the ideology of communism in Europe, and all writing in prose or whether in poetry have a permanent value. That is more important. What kind of writing, whatever kind of writing, whether it's prose or poetry or fiction or non-fiction, it has got a permanent value. It should have an excellent format in order to get the heightened emotional effect. So the term literature, the word literature, came out from the Latin word literatura, which is indeed derived from another word, litera. Litera means letters or letter, litera. So from litera, which means letter, we got literatura, and later derived into what is currently known as literature. So if you take the example of drama, for example, for instance, in drama you can find a popular union a link between the spoken word and the visual expression of the actors. That is the only format, that's the only form of literature in which we have the a union of spoken format as well as the visual expression of the actors, because there you have people involved in it. But in the other case of novels and all, you don't have any kind of visual expressions. But there, what's happening? You have your literary metabolism that takes place when you read a novel, when you watch a film, when you watch a drama, when you read a ballad, when you read a poem. The effect or the emotions or the feelings that happens within the literature will automatically jumps onto your feelings as well. That is called literary metabolism. But drama, when we consider drama, which is also viewed as part of literature, it combines the caustic as well as visual elements. Then another thing which I wanted to tell today is about genre. The term genre, which you might have heard one or two times today itself. G-E-N-R-E, genre. Genre or genre. It's a French word which means the type or the kind of literature, the type of literature. It's called the genre of literature. So the different genres of literature we will study during the course are poetry, drama, fiction, film, media. Those things will be there. Prose and poetry are two kinds of writing formats, and prose is of course the kind of straight writing, and poetry is a particular arrangement of words on a page for heightened emotional effect. But all writing falls into either one of these two categories, namely fiction and non-fiction. All writing. So that they are the two kinds of writing: fictional writing, and non-fictional writing. Because when you take into consideration fiction, the term fiction, all writings are not true. Majority of the writings in fictions are not true. It is drawn from the imagination, right from the author. He has the ability, he has the authority to use his own imagination and views for completing the fiction. But when it comes to non-fiction, there is no strict rules, but in non-fiction we can expect a majority of the works in non-fiction to be true. It is based on real facts or events or incidents which happened into the real life existence of that particular author, or in the community in which he is living, or the society in general. And when we take into consideration the part played by language in literature, within literature, it is very important to define the course of work, to define in which area, in which genre does this work belongs to. You need to understand the language first, the effect of language, the standard of language which has been used by the writer, the author, the style of language which has been used by the author. So then only you will consider it as part of whether it's a fiction, whether it's a non-fiction, whether it's a novel, whether it's a drama, biography, within because of the language that we defines it, because of the language we categorize it. So it all depends upon the style of language in which the author writes a work, the style in which he presents the story, the style in which he presents his imagination in a poetry. It can be considered as lucid. Sometimes it can be considered as boring, tense, complicated, sophisticated, you know, not natural. You can say artificial kind of work. Sometimes it happens, you know, in science fictions and all. You can find a lot of artificialities coming into place. And a writer has the opportunity. A writer has the sole authority to choose at certain episodes to use long sentences, short sentences. It depends. It's his own option. He has the authority to do it. Sometimes you can find the stories or novels or other works uh, located in one place, located at a particular time and all. It all depends upon the author. So these are the basic things I just wanted to share with you about literature and the impact of language in literature and the different ways of studying, the different approaches and methodologies that we use to appreciate and criticize literature. So we'll try to understand more about literature and language, uh, to understand the ways in which we appreciate and criticize literature in the next classes and the next sessions as well. So thank you so much.